Hey everybody, it's Johnny Five Pizza Guy. Today we have another interview with the author Mark T. Sneed. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Mark Sneed.
Um, what is your profession?
Well, I started out as a teacher. Um, I was I wrote for magazines, music magazines, and then after 30 years of teaching with kids who nearly drove me crazy, I decided to stop. And so I am now a full-time writer, and I relocated. I should have said that.
Okay, okay. Why did you decide to start writing books?
Well, um, I've always written. I think that the whole thing about writing books it was a logical progression. I when I was a young kid, probably younger than you, I started writing, and I guess I was really kind of like bored in my classes, and so I finished work early, and then I just kind of Google and write and draw and all that kind of stuff, and um, I, I think one of my teachers asked what I was doing, and I was like, nothing, just kind of like, waiting until the next work had to happen. And then she saw that I had written something, so she snatched it and took it and thought it was kind of like she thought I was, kind of screwing off, and I wasn't. And she showed it to my mom. She gave it to my mom because my mom was at work. She never could come to school, and my mother read it and was like really amazed by it. And my mom, I always would get in trouble because I talked a lot and because I read a lot, and I'd be the bored kid. And so my mom, once she got that paper, she read it and was like, "You wrote this?" I was like, "Yeah, I wrote it." And so and I thought I was in trouble because when your teacher grabs your paper, your mom is all like into it. Then my mom contacted my grandmother and told my grandmother about this paper I'd written, and I was like, I guess I'm gonna get in real trouble now. And it wasn't. So I didn't get in any trouble. They were really just happy that I wrote. I was like, okay. So that's how I got involved.
So kind of like journalism?
No, journalism is newspapers. So
Oh, okay.
um, I, I wrote, I guess, just creative stories because I think the first story I ever wrote was about a boy who I don't know if you can answer this question, but I'm originally from Chicago. And so when I grew up in Chicago, I used to get beat up a lot. I was the smallest kid in my school. And in Chicago, there was this crazy, what a pecking order is?
I think so.
You know what a hierarchy is where, like, okay, I'll make it simple. I'm bigger than you, right? Well, when I was in school, if you were bigger than someone, you beat up that kid. And especially if they talked. They talk crazy or whatever. And so everyone beat up everybody else down, from the biggest kid all the way down. And everyone wanted to have like a rep. So if you could have a fight or beat up someone, the people who were above you usually didn't fight you. Does that make sense? Because they didn't see you as a soft target. I was a soft target because I was the smallest kid. I mean, I was truly the smallest kid. And so the whole point of that was that when I was younger, I just wrote my first story. That's where I was going. So when I was younger, the first story I ever wrote was about a boy who was walking home, and he looked up, and a cloud was following him. And my whole story was about this kid who he didn't have any friends, but he had a cloud, and the cloud followed him like a puppy, but it was in the air, and no one believed him except him. That was my first story.
Hmm, okay, that's cool. Um, what is your motivation? What gets you out of bed every day?
Well, I set my alarm clock usually. No, I'm just kidding. So I don't know. I think to me. That question's okay, but like for me, I've always had my own motivations. I mean, I've never had like anyone to kind of like say, go out and do it, because everything I did was so different to all my family and all my friends. Um, I'll back up a little bit more. So again, I was the small kid, right? So when I started getting beaten up a lot, I started to realize I only have one choice. Well, I guess I had two choices, but the first choice never made sense. Fight back because they would just still beat me up, or run. So I started running. So when I was really young, I got really fast, and so people couldn't catch me. So everyone was like, "Oh, okay." Well, my mom, I didn't learn this until like, I went to high school. But my mom was playing when she was younger. She played basketball, but she kind of stopped playing sports, and so she didn't really care. But like for me, no one in my family, because it was just me and my mom. Um, there was no one really who was interested or would support anything I did. So when you ask the question of um, what gets me out of bed or whatever, that kind of stuff, it's me. I mean, I'm my own motivation. I don't believe that you have to have someone with your back all the time going, yeah, come on, Johnny, you got to do it. Because I've never had that. I mean, it's great that if you have it, but I've never had it. And like all the stuff I've done, like the writing, my sports, um, education, learning, and all that kind of stuff, it's always been driven by me. So I guess when what gets me up, I guess God and my desire to be better, a better person.
That's good. That's good.
Thank you.
What is your favorite? No.
Favorite fruit? I don't have, strawberry. Thank you.
What is your favorite book and what have you? Wait. What is your favorite book that you have written? Okay, that
My
was.
favorite book I've written. I think that's kind of complicated. Simply because I've written, I think I told you before, about 19 books, and it's sort of. I think that you should ask your mom who's her favorite child. You know what she's gonna say, right? I love you both, right? So you already know that's a goof answer. But I think like because you know she knows, you know, it's you. But for me, um, I'm always kind of hard pressed on the answer. I like Bully Nation because it got an award. And when I started writing, all I wanted to do was be an award winning writer. I mean, I'm really competitive, so I want that. I want simple things. I like stuff that, like, I love numbers because I want like, when I go to a book signing, I ask people how many books do people sell, and they'll tell me, and I'm like, I want to do more than that. That makes sense. I'm all about competition. So, but when you ask me what's my favorite book, it's not a competition because I've written them all. That makes sense. But I think that because I'm also immediately I want to say because I write a lot of science fiction and I write a lot of young adult, but at the same time, I've written romance, I've written thrillers, I've written what do you call it, like spy novels, and I really like stuff that it's not always the same stuff. So because that's why I write a multi-genre. That means so I don't write just the same story with the same characters, and so I really don't have a true favorite book. Though, though I'm going to answer you. I apologize for being long-winded to get there. I wrote a romance book,
Okay.
and I just I hate to talk about it because everyone thinks I'm stupid because I'm writing science fiction, right? But I wrote this romance book called Nothing Simple, and I love that book. I love it not because it's the greatest book I wrote, but because it's a love story, and you can see the development of the characters to that love story, and it's really kind of cool. It's just a really simple story, but set in Chicago, so of course there's got to be some violence because that's what I grew up with. But it's still a great story. I just love it because it was fun to write. And for me as a writer, I was on the journey of watching these characters fall in love. I mean, that to me is kind of makes it kind of fun. Don't get the wrong idea. I love Bully Nation and I love Counterfeit Nation and I love all the books I've written. I think that I really enjoy Bully Nation because it's so wild as a story. I like Counterfeit Nation because it you don't have to read the Bully Nation book to understand Counterfeit Nation because they're completely different stories. The only thing that's similar is the characters, and even then you don't even have to know what happened to the characters because the story is only a different story. That makes sense. So I think that in answer to your question, It's you, Johnny. I love you the most. Okay, just like your mom. How about that?
Do you have any favorite authors?
I I went to the University of California at Berkeley. I told you I'm from Chicago, but I went to school in California, and I had read. I've read. I was an English major, so that question is kind of loaded for me. I mean, I love Ralph Ellison. I truly love him. I think his Invisible Man. If you ever get a chance, you should read it. You should read it. I advocate for every black male in America to read this book because it is truly the microcosm of what's going on in America as for a black man and a black boy. Because if you read Richard Wright's Black Boy, he and Ellison wrote about the same story, not the same story, the same troubled life they had because they both grew up the same way, and they both have different tellings of the story, which is fascinating to me. But yeah, I mean, I think that for me, I, there don't get the wrong idea. Simultaneously, I want to say that I've read so many books. That's why I was saying I was an English major. I've read so many books. I don't know if you've ever heard of Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Love that book. It's one of my favorites. I love Mark Twain's Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. Great. But I mean, when I think about a book that boils down to be something that will touch everybody, that would be Invisible Man. Even though I read, I don't know if you, for the longest they said that Invisible Man was his only book because when he died, but he wrote Juneteenth. I don't know if you are familiar with that. If you get a chance, you should read it. It's okay. It's not as great as Invisible Man, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you can top such a great book. That's my answer.
Okay, okay. If there was one thing you could go back in time and tell your younger self, what would it be?
This is a big good one. I talked to your mom about this off camera, so um, I'm, I'm gonna try to preface it with a simple kind of statement. There are people in the world who have aspects of their life that are really troubling, and so like for me, I'm not the greatest person. I don't like to hang out with people a lot. I'm not that comfortable with them, and so um, but I was really smart when I was a kid. I'm not using that as past tense. I'm still smart, but I'm just saying as a kid, I was like super smart. I was like, when I forget what that kid, Encyclopedia Brown. You ever read that book, Encyclopedia Brown? Encyclopedia Brown is about a black kid who is super smart. He's sort of like a black Sherlock Holmes, but he's like I want to say like maybe elementary school, and so he goes on these really crazy journeys, but he's like really incredibly smart, and so I was I was Encyclopedia Brown for real. I was like, I mean, my teachers didn't even know what to do with me. I was double promoted. You know what that means, right? Double promoted. I was When I was a kid, I was double promoted twice in elementary school and in grade school. So I was like 4 grades higher than I should have been at my age, and so I didn't. I had a really hard time because, again, remember I said I was this big, and everybody else was like older. When I was in 8th grade, people thought I was in like 4th grade. You understand how small I am. When I took pictures, I was the kid in the front. Everybody else was, that how they do it. I
Yeah.
was this kid, and everybody was behind me. They were that tall compared to me, and so um, I preface all that because if I would have known that being smart meant that my teachers would have said, Mark, I need you to help Johnny, and Johnny would be like, okay, you're a nerd, and I'm gonna beat you up after you give me the answers. I was like, oh crap. I would have said, you know what, just be stupid, because it's easier. It's an easier road to go rather than being always being pushed into uncomfortable situations. Does that make sense? So like I was super smart, and so the teacher made me help everybody else who didn't understand, and I didn't want to help those people because they weren't nice to me. But My mom told me that I was supposed to do whatever my teacher told me, and I was like, oh crap. So I could I'd get in trouble if I didn't, right? So, and then the other thing is, if I would have known that sports, because I didn't. Again, I told you I was really fast, right? So I got to do sports, and I got to be really good at sports. So I played football, basketball. I played four sports in high school, and I went to college. And when I was get to college, I played football, and I was supposed to run track, but my football coach wouldn't allow me, so I only played football. And so, but I didn't. I would have probably not wanted to do any of that because I had to talk to people who I didn't really want to talk to. I mean, I didn't mind my teammates, sort of, but I mean, I like track. You know why I like track? Because I could do it all by myself. But there you go. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
What was your question? You don't remember? No. What was your question? Okay, I'm messing with you. Go on.
Okay, so, hmm, how do you want your literature to impact young people?
How would I want what?
How do you want your literature?
My literature? Oh, well, I think that I write again. I write a bunch of stuff. My young adult stuff. I guess that's what you're talking about. Um, I just wanted to I, let me pause for a second and think about what you're asking. I think that my answer would be this: I want my writing to help people understand that there's not just one answer, or that there's not just one perspective, not just one point of view. And too often, I've read, and because I read a lot of young adults as well because I want to make sure I'm falling in the sweet spot and knowing that I'm writing to the right people. But I find that they dumb down a lot of stuff. Many of the authors they don't challenge the young author or the young readers to understand things like complicated issues like Bully Nation and Counterfeit Nation. I'm gonna just tie those in really quickly. Are about a boy who is in love or hard like with this girl, and he's kind of like forced to make decisions at that time. But I rarely see that in a young adult novel that isn't some stereotype, isn't some like really kind of cookie cutter kind of response to, oh, um, I've always loved you. Oh, our situation's going to be wonderful. Oh, there's a bully. You understand that? That's the setup. Most in most young adult novels, and that's not my stuff. I think that you probably know friends and kids who might like each other, and then all the troubles that come from just liking each other. You understand? Because you got people who hate you just because, and you don't know why you didn't do anything to them. You understand what I'm saying? And that's kind of the story. Um, I think that I really enjoy and hope that people who read, the readers, get the opportunity to fall into a story and enjoy it and understand that there's something to talk about at the end of it. Because for me as a reader, I've always liked to find books that had like some legs to them. That like, later on you'll talk about and say, "Have you read this book?" Or why you might I might suggest you read this book. That makes sense because I think that what happens is there are a lot of kids who read a book and go, "It's okay. I don't want that book. That's not the book I want to write. I want the book that says, oh, the kids go, man, you should read this book. It says something that's different." Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. All right. All right. So my next question for you is,
How many eyes do I have?
who is your childhood leader?
I don't know what that means. I
Like, like who? Well, then again, you already said you don't really have any motivation except yourself, so I don't think that's really relevant at this point. Like, that's like saying like, who made you want to do what you do nowadays when you were a
you mean
kid?
like a role model?
Yeah, like role model. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
okay. So I, I I think you're to a certain extent you're right. I don't. I think I definitely had role models, but they were never anyone that I could touch. I mean, probably my grandfather and my grandma, but I think my grandfather was probably my role model because he was. I told you I'm from Chicago. I had my grandparents lived in Alabama, so you understand Chicago, Alabama, not close, right? So I would go see them in the summer. So you understand that that's like think about it. I go to school all this time and I only see them for 3 months, so it's not the same. But I don't know. I think that I had a lot of people who influenced me, but I think that here's my answer. My answer is it's all negative. So like all the people who influenced me were all the people who did bad things, and I said to myself in a cautionary way, I'm not going to be those people. That makes sense. So like what happened is I grew up. I was taught. I'm not going to continue to talk about your mom, but I grew up in a situation where because I explained this already, but I grew up where I knew a bunch of pimps because they were in my neighborhood. I knew a bunch of prostitutes because they were in my neighborhood. I knew drug dealers. They were in my neighborhood. I knew people who were on drugs in my neighborhood. And I just didn't want to be those people. And I would see people, and it's so crazy because everyone, I guess, has these. Well, not, I shouldn't say everyone. Everyone I know had those experiences, right? But of course, some people went left and some people went right. And for me, I was the kid who, when they said, don't stick your finger in that socket, it'll electrocute you, or don't touch the stove, it's hot. You only had to tell me once. I wasn't the one to walk over. Are you sure? Are you certain? I was like, yeah, I would watch somebody else get it and go, you guys are idiots. Why am I'm not going to do that. That doesn't make any sense, right? So when I would always, it would always fascinated me. And I guess I even heard this later on in life because the thing that got me was people would say to me, I'm gonna start smoking. I'm gonna start drinking. And I was like, most of the people we've seen smoke look like ashtrays. Most of the people we see drink are in the gutter. Why do you want to live that way? Because I mean, for me, that was enough. I think the people who led me were the negative influences because they made me go, I I don't think I want that situation. That if that makes any sense. Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense. So yeah, I get what you mean about like how some kids, let's just say the teacher might tell them just like do not stick a fork in the socket or else you're gonna get electrocuted.
Mhm.
5 minutes later, they do it.
Right. Or the better example was in class. I was again because I was so super small. I used to sit in the front because if I moved to the back, the kids would beat me up. So I was like, no. So I sat in the front all the time and answered all these questions, right? Well, the teacher would say like really simple stuff. Don't add this to your paper if you want a good grade. Oh, the kids are in the background. I'm doing whatever I want. You understand my point, right? I was like, I'm not super smart. They're just super stupid. Does that make sense? So,
Yeah. Um. So my next question for you is what is your favorite food? Oh wait, that's the wrong one.
good, good, because I don't have a favorite food.
Okay,
Wait a minute, I
well,
got an answer. I don't have an answer. That's my answer.
have you done interviews with any famous people?
I can probably spend the rest of this time talking about all the people I interviewed and talked and been with who are famous to you. Like I said, I was a music editor, and so I've interviewed a lot of people. I met and hung out. I spent 2 days with, I think it's 2 days, 2 days with Sean Puffy Combs and you know who Biggie is?
Yeah.
Biggie Small.
Oh yeah.
Okay, you know who Sean Combs is? Puffy.
P
P
Diddy.
Diddy.
Oh yeah. No,
Okay,
yeah.
you know who that is? You're familiar? You've heard of
Kinda.
these? Okay, maybe. Okay.
Ish.
Let me try to think. You know, have you heard of Digital Underground?
Digital.
No, no.
It sounds
I
familiar.
don't know. Yeah, you know, you're only five. Okay. You know who Tupac is?
Yeah. Definitely, definitely.
Okay, not two, not two chains, but Tupac. Okay, not too much, just Tupac. Okay, I'm moving on. So, yeah, I've interviewed. Oh, I nearly got into a fist fight with Ice Cube. You heard of Ice Cube?
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
I
let me
don't know
try.
if that's a flex, but I guess it is.
No, it's not a flex. It's just the truth. I mean, he didn't like. I interviewed him. He didn't like what I had, but I said he knows. He ain't in the news. Ain't no big deal. I'm trying to think. I'm trying. Like I said, I wouldn't know. You know who? I got it. You know who Master P is? You know who Bow Wow?
Bow Wow? I think I heard of him.
Okay, I think that's his son. That might no Romeo is his son. I think I don't know. Anyway, so Master P, it was. I interviewed him a lot. He was really a cool guy. You've heard of? I'm trying to think. You know who Too Short is?
Too short.
No, not you. Not you're not too short, but you are kind of too short. But anyway, Too Short. How about um, I interviewed a bunch of people. I've talked to and hung out with a lot of people. Trying to think. I know. You ever see you ever watch the? I think the TV show The Voice. You know what The Voice is?
The voice, the voice, the voice. No.
Okay. Anyway, so you know who Christina Aguilera is? Me either. I don't know her either. I just mentioned her name. Um, how about you're asking me? Do you know who do I know? Nobody that you know them. No, I don't. I'm not anybody. How about that?
All right. What is the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing?
Well, I think that self-publishing. Well, I'm gonna back up. So publishing used to be these traditional publishing houses. Like you probably have heard of them, like Random House. And, I'm trying to think who all the names that I can come up. Bantam. Uh, there are just these major companies that house publishing smaller houses inside that make the decisions on who's going to be published. For example, I'm trying to think of somebody who you might know. Okay, so you know who Rick Riordan is? You're really good at this, okay? I want you to know. I'm messing with you. So Rick Riordan wrote, he did the Percy Jackson. You heard of Percy Jackson? No,
Yeah.
you didn't. So don't play with me. But anyway, Rick Riordan wrote that, and he's the author. But he is on like Simon and Schuster, I think, or what's this called? It's something like Snoop. I can't think. Anyway, there's only five of them. There's five major publishing companies, and they control publishing. That's traditional publishing. And the way you get in is you write a letter, or you have an agent. You have to get an agent, and you write a letter, and they query. And you query means that you ask them if they're interested in writing a book, okay? And then they, out of the goodness of their heart, go, "Oh, I want your book to be published," and they publish it. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but they usually give you a ton of money so that you can keep writing your next book. So that's traditional publishing. Now, is it great? I don't know. I mean, when it was great until the internet kicked in, because when the internet kicked in, self-publishing became a thing. And because for a long time, maybe hundreds of years, I don't know how long publishing's been around, but for hundreds of years, that's what's traditional publishing. That's the only way you could get a book made. Now, the self-publishing is the exact opposite of that. You come up with a book, you want to write your own book, and you got a computer, you write it up, put it on the computer, you can get it formatted and all that kind of stuff, and guess what? You can get your book out. You've taken out the publishing company, suddenly this traditional publishing company, and now you have a book. Um, that's the difference. That's the two differences. Now, here's the other part. Remember how I said that the money, right? They give you money, and they also sometimes you'll see them on book tours. People go on book tours, and that's through their publishing company, or they do like they do an interview, a big interview, like on TV or something. That's a publishing company that set that up. Makes sense? But and I'm talking about traditional. I'm saying that. But when you're self-published, you don't have that. So you don't see independent or self-published authors on those venues. That's the difference.
Okay. Um, are there advantages or disadvantages to each publishing avenue?
Of course, I think that I don't know. I think that the hardest thing about traditional publishing is that it takes forever. Um, they like say for example you have a book, right? You have a book and you have a book idea. Traditional publishing, because they have these hoops to jump through. Like you have to have a literary agent. You, do you understand what a literary agent is? Okay, so here's an example. Say for example, if your book is $100, okay, you make $100. You got to give $15 of that 100 to your literary agent.
Oh.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of like tax.
No, that's not even touching taxes yet. We haven't even taxes coming after that.
Oh yeah.
Your
Right.
tax gets after that you only have $85. They still charge you on the 100, but then you get because you that was you choosing to have a literary agent. You're still getting taxed. That makes sense. Now I'm not done. Remember that publishing company, the traditional publishing company, they take 25%. So that's another $25. That because remember they gave you money. You get what I'm saying now? Yep. So of that 85, now how much did you make?
You have
This is
65.
close. It's 60. So think of it that way. So like in the reality of it, think about it. And again, you were talking about the taxes, right? You still are charged for the 100. You get that, right? But do you have 100?
No.
You only make 60, but they still charge you the 8% or whatever it is for you get it that 100. So they still take away. So even though you may make 60, do you really make 60? No. So that's the concept of this traditional part. Okay. Now here's the other part. The On the publishing or self-publishing, do I have a literary agent? Do I have a publisher? Do I?
Oh.
No. So who? How much percent do I get?
Um.
Say 100.
Oh, okay.
Say 100. You're right, man. Dang, your math is amazing. So it's 100%. That makes sense.
I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, but who takes all the risk? You do, right? The author. So I mean, are there advantages and disadvantages? Yeah, guaranteed. I think that to me, I like the control. I understand that. It, here's the other twist. You ever see books that have where they get the ratings where it's like 5 stars and all that kind of stuff? You know that the reviews. My books get 5 stars all the time. I'm happy with that. That's great. But it doesn't move the needle because I want to get people to read the book. I don't care about the rating. I want people to keep reading the book because if I get 1,000 people reading my book, think about it. I make a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Same goal. So but guess what? The publishers don't want me to make that money because why? Because they want me to go through them. Because again, who gets more money if I go through them? Not me. That makes sense.
Yep.
So I mean, I think that, and again, the hard part about the advantage of self-publishing, you get to write what you want.
Yep.
With traditional publishing, they want you to write what they want, which is really frightening because I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm scared to tell you this, but I'm gonna tell you the traditional publishers don't look like you or me, and they control everything that's being put out, and they have an agenda. So it's sad because the people who received awards in those publishing companies are fascinating. All the black writers who are um, taught, clapped for and applauded, write about slavery, uh, gangs, um, female abuse, because it has you got to have that black drama, and it, it's nothing uplifting. Everything they write about purposely is that. because that's what they want you to write about. Now, because I've done some research on this, and the scariest part is this: they want, and right now this is their jam. This is they want black writers to write about black homosexuality. Hmm. And it's weird because I'm like, wait a minute, you mean I could get a traditional publishing uh, deal if I wrote that? Well, you understand? You know what morals are, right? And ethics. Well, my morals and ethics don't want me to write that because I want to write about what I want to write about. But if you want to make money, if you're willing to work with their agenda and their message and give their message, they're fine. Isn't that horrible?
Yeah. All right. So my last question for you.
You're not going to ask me why.
Hmm?
You're not going to ask me why.
Oh, sure. Why?
Why do you think? Why do you think they want that?
To bring equality and probably make people read more books to make more money.
Equality?
Not quality, but I don't know how to explain it. Like I don't
I'll
know.
make it even easier, Johnny. Why do you think that? Here's a simple one.
Okay.
The last few people who have written, and I don't know if you know this, but in writing, the highest award is called a Pulitzer Prize. And a Pulitzer Prize is given to writers who are supposedly have a great message being sent out. Black writers that have received those Pulitzer Prizes, guess what the topics have always been?
What?
Slavery and urban life. And when I say urban life, I'm talking about drugs, prostitution, and broken homes. Isn't that sad? For them to think our lives boil down to that. And not only that. So you understand my question again? I'll ask it one more time because you never answered. I know you were asking me questions, and I didn't mean to turn the table on you. But the question is simple: why do you think that is? Why do you think these publishers do that? I'm talking about traditional publishers, not self-publishers.
Um, Probably to make it seem like maybe we're like that's what our lives are. You know, there's not much more to our lives besides that, and that's like what everybody's life is like. You know, that's what where it came from.
Right?
Like trying to put like a front cover on the book
Mm-hmm.
instead of looking in the back.
Right. I got you.
So, what is your message to the world?
I mean, my message to the world. I think my message is always be better than you were. Always continue to strive. Don't let people who have no understanding of what you are about and want to do try to dictate what you can do. Oh, really? So okay, I'm gonna help you out because remember I interviewed a bunch of people. Would you? Here's your last question. What you always say is there is there something I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about?
All right. Is there something that I didn't ask you that you want me to ask you?
Hmm, that's a good question. Um, I don't know. I think that I would. I think like the reason I'm sitting here is because you're young, and I think that people think that writing is really easy, and that writing a book is easy as well. But I've met a ton of people, tried to help a lot of people as well who wanted to write the book. They have an idea, and they think that it's going to be easy to do. And I think that people kind of think that it's like falling off that chair that anyone can do it. It's not that easy because I think that someone I can't remember who said it, but someone said that everyone has a story to tell. Well, here's the problem. I agree with it, but I disagree that everybody needs to write a story that they need to tell, if that makes any sense. Because not everyone can write a story, and more importantly, I don't know if every story needs to be told because I people get lost on what's important. Like I, one of the things I learned as a writer is that if it's a story that you've heard or you know, then don't tell it again. But people want to do that, and I'm like, unless you're gonna make it better, I don't want to hear it because like I grew up with a lot of drama, and I'm like, when I read, because I read a bunch of, I love urban, because that's the new thing. The publishers, these traditional publishers, they use urban now. Urban is black. That's their code word for it. So in urban drama, they're really talking about black. And I'm like, oh, and it's got components in it, so elements in it. And so of course I'm like, but not every story is that. Does that make sense? And so, but I don't need to hear that. I grew up with that stuff. So I hope that makes sense. So if you're gonna write something that's going to be interesting. I really like science. I really like science fiction because science fiction isn't, even though it's labeled science fiction, it can be anything. So you can write about being um, 4 foot nothing and hoping to be 5 foot tall, and it could be an interesting story, right? But if you put it in like romance, no one cares. They've always had short people. If you, but or if you put it in a detective novel, no one cares. You know what I'm saying? But put it in science fiction, suddenly it might be interesting. That makes sense? Because how do you, definitely going from 4 foot nothing to 5 foot, kind of interesting. How do you do it, right? And what science did you use? Did you did you get bit by a radioactive spider? Did you, what? Did you drink some um, radioactive isotope or something? That kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, um, is there anything else you want to ask me?
No, that's it.
Okay. You're not going to ask me how come I don't have hair.
Well, actually,
Well, what if I had alopecia? But I don't. But I'm just what?
all right. So now that you put that thought in my head, why don't you have hair?
Well, I have some back at the house. I'm kidding. I was an athlete for a long period of time, and one of the things I don't know if you play any sports, but if you play sports, that hairstyle that you have you can't flow with it because it's just tiring. I mean, think about it. After every training, I have to shower and then I have to wash my hair. That's just like it, and then it has to dry and all that kind of crap, and then and then you still go on to the next day. And I'm like, think about it. If I'm training 4 or 5 days a week, I spend like that's an hour plus every time just to let my hair dry. You understand what I'm saying? Because I mean, you imagine. I used to have hair, and I used to have like the. You remember? I don't see. You're too young. I used to look like a popsicle. I had a big old afro. And I looked like I had Michael Jackson afro. So I had a big old head of hair, and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to keep that hair." So when I got to college, I was like, I cut it down, and then I said, "All right, well, just cut it all off because it's easy."
All right. So thank you, Mr. Sneed, for your time to come out here and do an interview with us. And this is Johnny Five Pizza Guy. We're signing out and stay cheesy.